Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar tonight. I'm going to give it just a moment longer, just because I see some people are just joining us, and I want to make sure they have a chance to get their computers on and sort themselves out. Yeah, so we're still getting some people joining. So thanks so much for coming tonight. And I know it's sometimes challenging to come in the evenings, but we appreciate you all attending on this really important topic, talking about tools to help support healthy SunSense habits with young children, which of course is important all year round, but especially this time of year when we're looking at spring and summer and being outside a lot more perhaps than we have been in the winter months, which we all should be outside in winter too, but you know. Anyway, and I want to welcome our two our guest hosts with us tonight. So it's Tricia and Christina, and they'll be doing their own introductions, so I won't steal their thunder. And we're also joined tonight by Suzanne, who is working with Canadian Child Care Federation. And I wanted to let you know that you can ask, say hello if you'd like. Try it in the question bar, where you can say hello to people or your colleagues and let us know where you're joining us from. And there'll be a question and answer at the end of the webinar, but I'll let our host go through that with you as well. But there'll be a time at the end to ask questions that you may have or to get some more details about something. So I'm going to, oh, there we go. And the question's hi from Winnipeg. Oh, you're the first one. Hello. So yes, feel free to write where you're from up there. I see lots of people adding that now. And Suzanne, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can give us a hello and perhaps a land acknowledgement from the Federation.
Thank you, Robin. I'm Suzanne Schlechte, and I am happy to be giving the land acknowledgement this evening. As we gather together on this virtual platform, we acknowledge that we are each joining from the ancestral or unceded lands of Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples. The Canadian Child Care Federation's office is located on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. We honor their enduring connection to the land, waters, and culture, and we recognize all Indigenous peoples who have lived on and cared for these lands since time immemorial, those who live here now, and the 7 generations to come. We recognize the harms and injustices of the past and the ongoing impacts of colonization. We affirm our commitment to truth, reconciliation, and meaningful collaboration with Indigenous communities. As Indigenous peoples have always done, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and to respect the cultures, ceremonies, and contributions of all who call it home. We invite you now to take a moment of reflection, and if you feel comfortable, to share the name of the Indigenous lands you are joining from in the Q&A or the chat box. Let us honor the many peoples and places across these lands and consider the tangible steps each one of us can take to move forward in a spirit of truth, reconciliation, and collaboration.
Thank you, Suzanne. That was great. Thanks so much for starting us off on that note. And I will now turn it over to Tricia to say your welcomes and start your presentation. So hello, Tricia. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Oh, thanks so much, Suzanne and Robin. Thanks for having us. So this evening, Christina, Pickles, and I will be co-presenting, and I'll just let you know that we also had a third presenter who wasn't able to make it, but Cynthia Chung is a public health nurse at Ottawa Public Health, and she was kind enough to put together a few slides for us, so I'll share those shortly. So I'll start with introductions. My name is Tricia Lewchuck, and I'm a senior specialist with the Canadian Cancer Society, and I work on the cancer prevention team. I lead the SunSense program, which is a national sun safety awareness program for teachers and early childhood educators like yourselves. So I work to educate people on the risks of ultraviolet radiation and sharing with people how to protect children to reduce the future risk of cancer. And we also have Christina Pickles with us. Christina is an outdoor play advocate and the founder of Get Outside and Play, an organization that promotes outdoor play in early learning and childcare settings, schools, and communities. So today we want to share with you some important topics. Sorry sorry, I just wanted to, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was on the right slide there. But so yeah, we want to share, some information today. So the information Cynthia will share in her slides are related to climate change and sun safety. And then I'll talk a little bit about cancer statistics and melanoma and the reason why this work is so important. And then I'll share some practical tips about our SunSense program and what you get in terms of tools and resources as a part of the program. And then Christina will share some information about the importance of outdoor play. So before I begin, and I know Suzanne just did this based on where she's at, but I do want to acknowledge that Christina and I are on a different territory here in Alberta. So Christina and I are privileged to acknowledge that we are gathered in this virtual setting on the homeland of many Indigenous people. We both work, live, breathe, and play on the First Nations territories of Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8, and acknowledge these are traditional lands. The Dene, Stoney Nakoda, Nakota Sioux, Cree, Ojibwa, Saulteaux, Tsuut'ina, Métis, and Inuit not only lived and thrived on this land, but also kept and stewarded it. What became known as the province of Alberta in 1905 is also home to the Métis Nation, including 8 Métis settlements. Let us thank all Indigenous peoples for caring for and protecting this land. And today we are sharing knowledge with you from our home called Calgary. So I will now share some of Cynthia Chung's slides on the intersection of climate change and sun safety.
Climate change is known as the long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns, mainly due to human activity like burning coal, oil, and gas. Climate-related hazards can include extreme weather events like floods, derechoes, extreme heat, wildfires, air pollution from wildfires, which will all impact Canadians. Certain groups such as children, youth, low-income families, and those with health conditions have more negative health outcomes from climate change, like injuries from extreme weather events, breathing difficulties, diseases from foods and bugs, mental stress, and more. The upper ozone layer, also known as stratospheric ozone, acts as Earth's sunscreen and protects all life from the sun's ultraviolet radiation, UVR. The intensity of UVR varies based on cloud coverage, reflective snow and ice, the thickness of the ozone layer, the time of day, the time of year, and our latitudes on the Earth. Because of these variables, the climate change impacts on UVR is difficult to determine, but as the seasons are getting warmer for longer, with shorter winters, children and families are spending more time outdoors, thus increasing their exposure to the sun, mosquitoes, and ticks. The effects of climate change can be felt very physically, mentally, spiritually, and across the globe, and it impacts schools, daycares, children, and youth. Children face special risks from air pollution due to their smaller airways and their need to breathe more rapidly, inhaling more polluted air compared to adults, both indoors and outdoors, potentially leading to lung diseases as they grow older. Also, children cannot regulate their body temperature in extremely hot or cold climates because they have larger body surface areas compared to weight, which makes them at higher risk for heat and cold-related illnesses. Extreme weather like heat waves, heavy rain, and smoky air can cancel outdoor activities like recess, sports, and after-school activities, making kids stay indoors and spend more time sedentary on screens. This can impact overall physical fitness, which changes the ability to acclimate to and tolerate rising temperatures from climate change. Also, 73% of young Canadians aged 16 to 25 years old reported thinking that the future is frightening, and 78% reported that climate change impacts their overall mental health. Although climate change can sound scary, going outside and enjoying nature is so important for physical, mental, and spiritual health. There are many actions to take to protect yourself, others, and all from the effects of climate change. So some individual actions that can be role modeled or promoted to the children and youth can be to wear sunscreen and sunglasses or lightweight long sleeves outside. If it's really hot out, you can stay hydrated. And when you come back from the outdoors, do a quick tick check. You can also check the Air Quality Health Index and talk about climate change in your classes.
Well, I hope that you found the information that Cynthia provided informative. She actually put together some slides for us for both early childhood educators and teachers. So some of it is related to a little bit older children as well. But I think the information is important, and it's just interesting to know kind of how climate change is impacting, how we use sun protection in our classrooms and with early childhood educators like yourselves. So the theme that you're going to hear throughout this presentation is around being knowledgeable about what risk factors are outdoors and taking precautions, but not letting that stop you from going outdoors as much as possible. And as a member of the Canadian Cancer Society, I feel it's always important to highlight the work we do. So the next couple of slides, I will touch on the reason behind why SunSense and education on sun safety is so important. Cancer touches the lives of so many people, and every 3 minutes someone hears the words, "You have cancer." We are all affected in some way, and that's why I'm here today. About 4 in 10 cancer cases can be prevented through healthy living and policies that protect the health of Canadians, and this includes behaviors such as wearing sunscreen. So the incident rate for melanoma has increased annually from 1984 to 2019, and if it continues on this path, new melanoma cases will continue to rise. The projected increase in melanoma cases underscores the need for proactive measures and the reason we must address these trends through education and effective sun safety practices. So that's where all of you come in. Childhood exposure to ultraviolet radiation is an important risk factor for developing skin cancer. And since research tells us that 80% of an individual's lifetime exposure to the sun occurs before the age of 18, it's important that we establish healthy behaviors in childhood that can last a lifetime and protect children and future adults of getting skin cancer. So you may not wake up and think about this, but please know that actions you take with the children in your care in the early childhood centers can positively impact children's health now and into the future. So I want to tell you a little bit about the SunSense program. So SunSense is a national sun safety initiative with a goal to reduce skin cancer rates in Canada through early intervention and development of sun safety behaviors during childhood for the reasons I just mentioned. So SunSense provides free tools and resources to schools and early childhood centers to empower staff to create sun-safe environments and educate children about sun safety. So once you register for SunSense, you will gain access to the portal, which includes tools and resources, and the main part of the program, which is the certification training. The SunSense certification training is designed to educate and train staff in childcare centers. By implementing sun safety practices and providing resources in both English and French, we can create a more informed community across the country. So the certification program is made up of 18 modules. It takes, roughly just over an hour to complete. And these modules were created by the Saskatchewan Cancer Agency, who provided them to us. And so for now, we're using the modules for the English program, but we also have a French program that the Canadian Cancer Society developed ourselves. So I want to kind of get into a little bit more of the practical tips. So on this slide, you will see what we call the 5 S's. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of these before, but it's seek, slip, slap, slop, and slide, which is a bit of a tongue twister. But the 5 S's outline essential sun-safe behaviors that everyone should adopt. And the 5 S's were developed many years ago in the province of Victoria in Australia. It was one of their most successful marketing campaigns to keep their citizens safe from the sun in a country with some of the highest levels of ultraviolet radiation in the world. And I can tell you from my own personal experience when I lived in Australia that you can tell on people's skin, the skin of men and women, just the damage that the sun can do. Many people look kind of older than their age and with more sun damage because of the high UV there. So it's really good learning for us to remember these things and to remember the sun safe practices to wear sunscreen and practice all these 5 behaviors. So we hope that you will use the 5 S's model. So by seeking shade, slipping on protective clothing, slapping on a wide brim hat, slopping on sunscreen, and sliding on sunglasses, you can significantly reduce the risk of skin damage for yourself and the children in your care. So the UV index is a critical tool for understanding the strength of the sun's UV rays. And the index increase, like the higher the number on the UV index, the more damage it can do to both skin and eyes. So it's essential to monitor the UV index and take appropriate precautions based on the readings. So if you see on the slide, there's a little kind of arrow towards a 3. So 3 is the number that you want to just know is the basic number where you would want to use sun protection. So certainly you can use sun protection lower than that, but anything 3 and above is what you want to focus on. So just some practical tips related to the UV index. So we recommend that you check the UV index every morning using reliable sources like Environment Canada's weather page. Display the UV index on a whiteboard for staff and parents to see. And plan outdoor play outside of peak hours as much as possible. And peak hours run from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And plan for outdoor play using the 5 S's that we just talked about. So again, for outdoor play, like, you know, the theme of this presentation is that we really don't want you to go indoors often as much as possible, but ensuring that there's adequate shade outside is an important factor, especially when the UV is high. And of course, applying and reapplying sunscreen. So just a little video to share with you. So hopefully this works.
So I had the new staff start a couple days ago, and here she is putting sunscreen on. So she's going like this, and she's gently putting it on the child's face like this. And I'm going, oh, really? That's how you're going to put sunscreen on? That's not it. For one thing, it's going to take forever to get through this transition and get the children outside. But the other thing is she's just not applying enough. We've got to slop it on. So I go over and I grab the sunscreen bottle and I put a slop of sunscreen on my hand and I put it like this and I start slopping it on the child. And I say, that's how you put on sunscreen. I showed her that we can move through this transition really quick and make sure that we're applying it properly.
Oh, whoops. Oh, great. So yeah, I mean, I think it's important, and some people don't know that you really should be putting adequate amounts of sunscreen on. So we recommend roughly 2 tablespoons, kind of depending on the size of your, you know, whether you're putting on an adult or a child. And so here are some more practical tips related to sunscreen. And also as part of the program, you can view the Sunscreen 101 document that's really easy to kind of tell you the do's and don'ts of sunscreen. So that's available as part of the program. It's also important to educate staff through the SunSense training so they understand sunscreen and how to apply it, communicating with parents to send sunscreen and protective clothing and hats, etc., for their children so that you have that on hand when UV is high. And placing sunscreen station near exits can be really helpful as well. So, you know, both staff and kids can remember to make sure that sunscreen goes on before they go outside. And then kind of the bare minimum recommendations we have is that using a minimum of 30 SPF and broad spectrum sunscreen and applying every 2 hours. So the idea here is that, like, you're really creating a routine around sunscreen to make sure that it's going on every time you're going outside. So also as part of the program, you will have access to videos and activities that you can use with kids to make learning about the sun and appropriate behaviors and clothing for each season fun. So on this slide, I'm showing a couple different activities. The first one being a sing-along. It's about sun, and we have that link on the program portal, on the SunSense portal. We also have during the modules that you'll learn, you know, how to use trying on hats. So like using different hats and having kids put them on and talking about the wide brim and being able to protect their face from the sun. So kind of, you know, making these lessons fun is part of what we highlight in the program. And then of course, the last thing here is clothing for the season. So in this image, I'm showing that, you know, you're talking about the winter. What kind of clothing do you need for the winter? What do you need for the summer? And so really just engaging children on what appropriate clothing is in different seasons. So one of the most sought after materials as part of the SunSense program are our UV bracelets. So when kids wear them outside, they turn color, and the darker the purple, the higher the UV. So UV bracelets are an innovative tool for teaching children about UV exposure, and by engaging children in hands-on learning, we can help them understand the importance of sun safety in a practical and fun way. So when you register for SunSense and complete the certification program, you will get access to the material order form and can order posters and UV bracelets like these as long as it's while quantities last. But this is something that you could get access to once you complete certification. So shade planning is another crucial part of the program, and it's crucial for creating safe outdoor environments. So SunSense provides strategies for conducting shade audits to see, like, do you have an adequate shade in your environment? Do you need more shade? And also we provide ideas on how to brainstorm creative solutions to shade to ensure children have access to shaded areas while they're playing outdoors. So part of what we want to highlight today is, again, just kind of, talking about this theme I've mentioned before, but just like, what do we need to do? What is the outside environment to ensure that kids can play outside even when the UV is high and the sun is strong? So through the SunSense program, you can access the shade planning guide and other templates to support the implementation of shade options in your space. And this is a really important key factor for daycares to use to ensure they have enough shade. So engaging parents in sun safety is also vital. Strategies for reaching out to parents include sending letters home, using social media to share the sun safe measures you're taking, and requesting that parents provide sunscreen, hats, and protective clothing that can be used when their children are in your care. So part of the work you will likely end up doing is educating on sun safety to parents, which is why the SunSense certification program is so important. So I've spoken already about the SunSense certification, but I just wanted to spend a minute or two highlighting a few of the benefits of participation. So when you complete the certification program, as I mentioned before, you will have access to the materials order form. You will also receive a certificate and a seal to show parents your commitment to sun safety. And all staff should do the certification modules, and then they should be discussed so that you can create a policy together about what sun-safe behaviors you want to do regularly and implement as part of regular routines. So this would be also educating and training new staff, having refreshers on sun safety in the springtime, and displaying your seal and what that means to staff and parents and children in terms of behaviors practiced. So how do you register? So you need to go to sunsense.ca and select daycare registration. Once you sign up, you'll be sent an email to create a password, and then you can go onto the portal using your email and the password you created and access all the resources as part of the program portal and the certification. You can also point parents to this website, sunsense.ca. There's public-facing resources that they can access for parents as well. So to wrap up my part of the presentation, I would like to just review the process for joining SunSense so you can fully utilize all the benefits offered. So step one is to register. Step two would be to review all the available resources and see what would be most useful for you to use. Do the certification training and then share the information with other staff to make sure that everyone there is trained. Order materials, and then review and implement sun-safe activities on a regular basis. Review the policy and shade guidelines and involve parents as much as possible in the process. So I'm happy to pass it over now to Christina, and she's going to talk to you about getting outside and playing.
So I'm wondering, Tricia, there were some questions that might be better to answer kind of right now, just because it applies directly to your section. Do you think that would be okay? Sure, I just don't want to lose questions in there. So there was someone who had a question about, they've had parents concerned about the level of carcinogen ingredients being applied on their child's skin through sunscreen.
Right.
And so what the risk of sunscreen versus the sun is.
Right. So, I mean, I think there's like social media can be really beneficial in some ways, and sometimes it can be problematic. But like a lot of what we do at CCS is related to research, and we have found no scientific evidence that there's anything carcinogenic within sunscreen. And so that's kind of the answer that we always say. And so I think people hear these things, they get worried, and so we work with people all the time, and the most important thing to do is to make sure that your sunscreen has like a DIN number. So, those are things that means that Health Canada approves the sunscreen. But apart from that, sunscreen has been proven to be effective in the case of protecting against UVR, and that's the most important thing to remember.
Right. Someone is asking for recommended brands. They've had staff say that Banana Boat, for instance, isn't a good brand. Is there any recommendations, or is it more specific things like looking for the DIN number?
Right. Yeah. No, we don't really make recommendations in terms of sunscreen because there's plenty of sunscreen manufacturers that provide, adequate and effective sunscreen. So I think it's about finding one that works for you. Sometimes the application goes on better. So, there isn't, we don't have a list of ones that we prefer or don't prefer. It's more of a personal choice.
So, and someone else asked, so we shouldn't be outside between 11 and 3? Or is that just the highest? Like, can you talk more about that?
Yes. So I think the idea here is like we're really providing information about planning. So if you know, if children are going to be outside and you can have them playing before 11 and after 3 as part of play, that works out best. But we certainly don't want people to, you know, anyone to stay inside. But we just want to say that between 11 and 3, those are the peak hours for sun and UV, and so you have to be especially mindful during those times.
A couple more questions. Can individuals be certified, or do you have to go through a daycare to take the program?
Well, yeah, the program is, I mean, so if you have like a, you know, a home-based daycare, that's fine, but it's only for, at this time, teachers and early childhood educators.
Okay. And someone mentioned that spray-on sunscreen. Is the liquid stuff better?
Right. So yeah, I know it's so easy to like want to know, kind of tell me which sunscreen to get, but you know, we don't, you know, as an organization and a nonprofit, we just don't recommend one, or you know, one over the other, whether it's liquid or, you know, both work well.
Cool. All right. I just thought it would make sense to answer those questions with all that information was kind of fresh in our brain.
Yeah, and I know, and I just think, I guess, like, I just want to leave everyone with this notion that, you know, depending, like, where are you, you know, when you hear these things, I just ask that you kind of think about where you're getting the information and just be looking at reliable sources to make sure that you're finding out, you know, when these questions come up, like, where are you hearing them, so that you're making sure you're getting accurate information as to whether what's in sunscreen is problematic or not. I mean, it's definitely a common thing that we're hearing from people, so I just want to kind of leave you with that.
There was another question in there, but I'll leave you to find it because it was very specific to their situation. So, all right, okay. Thank you, Tricia. That was great. So when I first met Tricia at a conference, at the art conference here in Alberta, and part of my heart kind of sunk a little bit because I was like, oh, another reason why educators are going to have trouble getting outside, because now we're afraid of the sun. It's too cold, now it's too hot, and it's just, there's just so much. And so of course they're not against getting outside to play. So we thought it was a nice combination to have her and I present. So talking about how we can get outside safely, and then I can talk about things that we can do outside in the summer to keep cool and maybe encourage children to stay in the shade. So that's where my section comes in. Because I know from talking to educators, from doing surveys and lots of chatting with early childhood educators, that it's hard to get outside. In the winter, in the summer, transitions are challenging. There's lots of barriers in our way to getting outside. So how can we do it safely, and how can we create engaging experiences for the children in the outdoor environment? So my name is Christina Pickles, and I run Get Outside and Play. We do mostly professional learning for early childhood educators. We just did a great conference here in Calgary, just really building the confidence and competence of early childhood educators in getting children outside in all seasons. Next slide, Tricia.
Oh, did it work? There we go. Sorry.
Oh yeah. So I'm gonna ask Tricia just to flip through these next couple of slides, and I just want you to look at these children outside in the summertime, and just what do you see here, and how does it make you feel? So just Tricia, just flip through them. All right. So in the questions, if you can, I would love to hear what words come to mind when you think about outdoor play in the summertime. Let us know some of the words that come to mind. Freewheeling. I love that. I haven't heard that one before. I've heard lots of freedom, but freewheeling, risky play, fun under fresh air, fun under the sun, mud, and fun, exploration, curiosity, fun. They look like they're having a really great unstructured play with loose parts. Megan says mosquitoes. Yeah, yeah. Fun, unstructured, amazing. Yeah, awesome. Lots of fun, messy, free range. Yeah. I like to start with what comes to our hearts, not just our minds, but what comes to our hearts when we think about and see children playing outside. And these are all amazing words that you've come up with. Next slide, Tricia. So I did a recent survey of early childhood educators here in Alberta, and we asked them what they love about being outside with children. And over again, these are the big words that came up, and they definitely all came up the way in what you just said. So fresh air, freedom, like it's just, we can be big and we can be loud and we can be ourselves outside. We have a bit more freedom to do that. Movement, we can move our bodies in ways that we can't inside. Exploration, connection with nature, imagination, and active play. So everything you came up with is also what these 200 early childhood educators here in Alberta identified as important. Next slide, please. And I pulled out a couple of wonderful quotes from the educators when they were asked what brings them joy when they're outside with children. The freedom to dream big and go wild. I think that's going to be a t-shirt one day. They just play differently. They're calmer, they're more cooperative when they're outside, and sometimes have kinder words. My favorite thing about being outdoors is discovering how brave kids are when playing and overcoming fears. And someone in here mentioned the idea of risky play. We have a bit more freedom to do that outside. Another educator said, there's something special about connecting with nature alongside the children and witnessing their growth and development in such a rich and stimulating environment. And finally, this educator loves the sparkle a child gets in their eye the moment they step outside, their wonder, their amazement, and they notice the small things. So these are words directly from the educators. And guess what? It aligns with what the research is telling us about outdoor play as well. There's piles and piles of research, and we're not going to get into it here. But the research tells us all these things, exactly what educators and exactly what you see outside with children is what we know is positive. So educators are seeing it, researchers are seeing it, and yet there's still barriers that we face in getting outside with young children. Next slide, please. So I do acknowledge all the time that getting outside isn't all rainbows and unicorns. It can be really difficult. So let us know in the chat, what are some of the barriers you have specifically to outdoor play in the summer? We know winter has lots of barriers, but I've never asked this question specifically to summer. Do you have any barriers to outdoor play in the summer? Let us know in the question section. Shade, policies, smoke. Yeah, more smoke with forest fires. We already have fires here in Alberta this week. Wasps, oh my goodness. Last year, the wasps were unbelievable where I live and work. Ugh, thunderstorms, naps and potty training. That's a big one. You have other things, other care needs. The children have other care needs that need to be taken care of. Parents sending kids in cute summer clothes that get ruined. Totally. High temperatures. It can be too hot. Not enough shade, very hot, unsafe play areas, ticks. Wind can be a big thing. Yeah, we had in the space that I work in, we had a big tree come down. Luckily, it was when we weren't there. Yeah. Unsafe items in parks, bugs. Yeah. Yeah, so all these things are barriers and they make it a bit more challenging to be outside in the summer. So last summer we had an incredible wasp blossom bloom here in Alberta. And the camps that I run outside, I had to tell parents not to send any lunch meat, any meat at all, because the wasps could smell it and they would come. So we were doing things to help keep the children safe from the wasps, because there were just so many of them. So these are things we do have to be aware of. Nice. Hot climbers and slides, so true. So when we also asked educators about their barriers, again, we often come up with it's too cold, the children aren't dressed properly, but several of you said this too, the lack of shade. It is huge. So many of our programs have no trees in your outdoor play space, and there's no shade structure. And so it's too hot, the educators are uncomfortable, and the children are uncomfortable. And now we know that this sort of sun exposure increases our risk of melanoma later in life. So I think there's a huge, we need to figure out how to add more shade to our spaces. I can get on my soapbox about our play spaces. Often they're an afterthought. We spend a lot of time in designing our indoor spaces, and then our outdoor spaces don't get the love that they deserve. I've seen spaces that are south facing, so they get the heat of the afternoon sun. Spaces that are on rooftops that have so much sun exposure and no access to shade. So shade is a huge one. There was a really great report put out called the Shade Lookbook from Cancer BC. And they did some really interesting work around what, like someone said, hot climbers and slides. The temperature was difference between a plastic slide in the sun and a plastic slide under a shade structure was huge. It went from like 40 degrees down to 18 degrees. I can't remember the exact number, but it made it safe for the children to use. So shade, I think, is one of the biggest things we need to address in our play spaces. How can we increase the shade? Wind is also an issue, which is interesting because in the summer we kind of want a little bit of wind to cool the air a little bit, and in the winter we don't want wind because it reduces the temperature. So I think when we think about designing our play spaces, we need to think about maybe movable wind screens that we can put up in the winter that might allow us to stay outside longer when it's cold, and that we can remove in the summer to allow more airflow in our space. I think there's some innovative ways that we can really think about how we can address wind. Smoke, you know what? There's no, like, we can't go outside when it's too smoky. It's not safe for the children. So there's no, I don't have any great solutions to smoke. I think it's going to be more of a reality. I think one of my solutions will be more play at other times of year. So really becoming more comfortable with play in the winter and in the spring when perhaps we have less forest fire. So that's the only solution I've come up with to how to still get children outside and protect them from smoke. And heat as well. And I think the heat is connected to the shade and where we're putting our play spaces. So those are just a couple of ideas to think about. And I think the biggest one, if you're going to do anything, is to consider the shade in your play space. Tricia, can I have the next slide? So this is a really great quote from a post-secondary instructor. The outdoors is offering you a gift, not a curse. And I use this quote to talk about the gifts that being outside offers us, that the weather offers us, that the seasons offer us, and how can we embrace those? Because that's one of the great things about being outside, is that maybe we don't have to create provocations and invitations. We go outside and the land provides that for the children to explore. So the outdoors, thinking about outdoors is not as something, all the negative and the barriers, but what are the gifts that the outdoors is offering us and the children? Can I have the next slide? So I wanted to give just some brief little ideas, and again, you're probably doing a lot of these things already, but I've just pulled pictures from other programs and some things that I do with children as well outside in the summer. So of course, water, it's a no-brainer in the summertime. It helps keep us cool. And it makes sense to play with water outside because you can be messier outside. You're not going to get water and slippery all over the floor. You can do this outside. One of our favorite things, and I just did it this week with a parented program, we brought out the babies, and the babies were all dirty with mud, the baby dolls, not the real babies, the baby dolls, and the children washed them. So we just have this huge basin, and the children love, you've probably seen this, some children love washing things. Sometimes we use trucks, so the trucks get played with outside and then they get to wash them. I remember talking to one program, they needed to clean all their chairs one summer, so the children cleaned them. They just love doing that. So in the summer, it's easier to do that type of play outside. Any sort of mixing with water, we have one of those hand crank mixers that the children really love to play with. And this other picture, this is a turkey baster, and children love those. We also have little eyedroppers with really big droppers on top that make it easy to suck up water and squirt it out. We also have really big syringes. Of course, they don't have a needle on the end, but they just have and the children love to play with those too. It's really great pincer grip, really great fine motor skills that they work on using those. So what can you do with water outside? Next slide, please. Summer is such a great time for adventure. There's more, we can stay outside for longer, we can go further with the children without getting cold. So it's a great time to embrace adventure outside. And the adventure doesn't have to be a big one. Most of you are working with young children, and so walking to a local park is enough. Walking down the street and around the corner might be enough. You don't have to go far for young children to have an adventure. And this is an example. In 2019, we did a hill rolling challenge. It was a family event, but you could easily do it just with the children. We had every child got a little piece of cardboard, little paper, and every time they rolled down the hill, they got a sticker. So it was a different way to look at using the space. And so at the end of the day, we could count how many stickers we used, and we could report that we had 265 rolls down the hill. So very simple adventures. It doesn't need to be grand unless you want it to be. And letting the children lead those adventures as well. Maybe you find a trail and you follow it. Going to new parks is always great as well. Next slide, please. This is an example of making a fruit juice slushy. This is a picture from the winter, but it would be a really great summer activity. So this is the ingredients list. You have in a big bag and then in a smaller bag with the juice in it. And then you have salt and ice on the outside, and the children shake it for about 3 to 4 minutes and it turns into a slushie. So it's a great activity and you get a sweet treat at the end. So take a picture of that recipe. It's really a lot of fun. Next slide, please. And depending on the age group, but bubbles, of course, are fabulous. Every program uses bubbles, but I did giant bubbles with a group last summer, and the younger ones might have trouble making them themselves, but you could make them and they would love them. I just used plastic straws with yarn in between them. And then this recipe, the key is the glycerin, and you can make massive bubbles. And the children absolutely adore these huge bubbles. And they can really go far. All right, next slide, please. And again, I was thinking of things to keep when it is that height of the day, say 11 to 3, and you are outside, how can we work on keeping children in shaded areas? And so perhaps still being outside, but being a bit more protected from the UV radiation. So things like doing your reading outside, having lots of books to look at outside is a great way to keep children more in the shade than in the sun. Next slide. Boxes are a great thing in the summer. I use boxes all time of the year, but summer is especially great, and it also could double as a shade structure. I'm a regular at my local recycling bins. Most people are putting boxes in. I'm the weird person pulling boxes out, and I'm sure many of you are as well. But having chalk with boxes, I have some not sharp, but serrated box knives that children use, small, even the younger ones do, to cut the boxes into different shapes. So it can double as a shade structure as well as for play as well. Next slide. And it's a great time of year again to reduce that UV radiation. Perhaps you're not an expert at putting up a tarp, but maybe you don't have to be. But different examples of how you might be able to create some shade. So these are just bed sheets with string, with ropes between trees, and the bed sheets have been tied to the ropes or clipped to the ropes. And it's a place for shade, but it also doubles as a play structure. Bring some old pillows out, bring some teddies out as well, and you have a place where children are protected from the sun as well as having a play space. And here's some, the next slide, Tricia, and here's some examples of other super simple, not super fancy little shelters that people have made with bed sheets. Again, just a rope between two trees with making sort of an A-frame and holding that out either with a stake or some rocks creates a little hidey hole for children. So here's some different examples. These are actually made by educators. Young children often need help depending on the age with putting these together. They might have an idea, but they need help from us to do some of the knots and that sort of thing to help them with it. So next slide. I was also thinking about small world play as a really great way to keep children in a smaller area in the trees or under a shade structure. So small world play, it basically takes the big world and brings it down to a scale where children can manipulate it and understand it in a different way. So sometimes I put the question out there, can we build a playground for an ant using loose parts that we find around here? Can we build, there's ladybugs too, they love ladybugs, can we build a playground for a ladybug or a home for a ladybug using loose parts around us? Also bringing out the little dinosaurs, other little plastic toys that you play with indoors, bringing those outdoors will really inspire this type of play as well. So small world play is a great way where if you don't have a huge outdoor space, or if you want to keep the children in the shade, this is one idea to try. Next slide. And I think summer is also an amazing time to notice life around us. There are butterflies and insects and worms and beetles and things that we don't see any other time of the year. And they are living creatures that children can have a direct contact with and care for and learn about. So I think summer is a season of noticing the things that live around us. We have some stumps at the site that I work with, and there's often beetles under them, and the children love looking for those beetles. We leave them after they've engaged with them a little bit. But it's a great season for just sometimes slowing down because we're not cold. We might not need to move, but we can notice the creatures that are crawling and slithering around us a bit more, and sharing those experiences and those curiosities with the children that we're with every day. Next slide. All right, that's the end. So we covered quite a bit. We just wanted to give you, I wanted to give you a couple of ideas to leave with. I love talking about outdoor play, so my contact is there if you want to reach out. Yeah, do we have some time for questions?
Sure. So if you have any questions, please put them in the box. I did answer a few that were just easy ones for me to do that didn't need the whole thing. But excuse me, if there's some other ones you guys have in mind. I did neglect to mention the certificates at the beginning. I'm sorry about that. Everyone who's watched the live webinar event, this live webinar event, will be getting a certificate for 1 hour of professional learning, professional development from the Canadian Childcare Federation. So that will be sent out by the end of this week with a follow-up email. And Christina, I mentioned in the follow-up email, I'll put your recipes in there. People were asking for them. So the ones that were on your slides, so I can include those. And you'll also be able to view the webinar in its entirety on our YouTube page, but you will not be able to get a certificate for that if you're just watching the replay, if you say share with a colleague, which we encourage you to do. But unfortunately, you have to attend the live webinar event to get the certificate. So sorry, on to your questions.
Oops, don't see any popping. Oh. So someone's asking, what time is it safe to be out without sunscreen? Before 9 a.m.?
So it doesn't work that way. That's why you need to check the UV index every morning and see what the UV index is, because it can be any time of day, and it's not even related specifically to how hot it. Like you can't even just say, okay, the temperature is this, XYZ, and that means I need sun protection. But so anything above a 3 on the UV index is the most important thing to remember.
Right.
For some reason, I can't see anything in the chat, so I don't know why mine's funny, but I'm relying on the three of you if there's anything.
Yep.
Just while we're waiting, I guess wanted to also say thank you for everyone's participation today. And like as Christina mentioned, that's how you can reach her, and my contact details are there as well. And certainly regarding the SunSense program or anything we discussed today, I'm happy to assist if anyone has questions after we end tonight.
And we'll include all that information in the follow-up email, because I'm sorry I just switched slides on you, but yes, we will include your contact information and information about the SunSense program as well, because that is also a program that the Canadian Childcare Federation is endorsing. So we will include that information in there too. And I just personally want to say I was excited to learn some new things, and it's really good to have this as a refresher for some of the things I thought I remembered, but maybe I hadn't. And like the 5 S's, never really knew about that, so that was really great. And I really enjoyed hearing about the rolling stickers. I love that idea, Christina. And I like the idea of the small world play. I thought that was really intriguing. So those are some key takeaways I had. I'm sure you guys have lots more that have watched our whole presentation. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne, my colleague, because she wants to give a little shout out to one of our affiliates. So Suzanne, over to you. There we go.
Thank you very much, Robin. And just, as an endorsement, I took the SunSense course and it was a great course. So if there are people in the webinar that haven't taken it, yeah, I highly recommend that you check it out, because there's a lot of great information in there. And I just want to close my screen so that I can share. And you can still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the Early Childhood Educators of BC is committed to advancing the profession of early childhood education by collaboratively engaging in innovative policy development, research, and education that uphold their ethics, values, principles, and obligations. ECEBC has been working to advance the quality and professionalism of early care and learning since 1969. As part of their ethical responsibility to the profession, they strategically commit their time and resources to educating the sector and community by investigating and promoting the development of strong public policies and best practices that are based in research and evidence. And if you check out the QR code, you can check out their website.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're so happy you all could be here, and will send out those certificates this week. We will also be sending out a follow-up email with some of the tips and tricks that Tricia and Christina shared with us, which is great. Especially some of those recipes, because I know people really will appreciate those, Christina. And then also some information about the SunSense course, because I know that's really a key interest from a lot of you. So we're going to be sending that information out so you guys can get online and join that right away, because it's a great opportunity for some professional development that would be really, really valuable, especially this time of year. So thank you. Is there anything else you want to add, Christina or Tricia, or are you?
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, I'm always in awe of what you're doing over there at the Federation. And I mean, just, you know, all the work you're doing. So kudos to you. And thank you very much for having Christina and I join today. And we hope we can, you know, participate maybe in the future. So thanks again.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us with that expertise that we really needed to hear about. And Suzanne, thank you to you for joining us from out there in BC. And we will then see you next time on our next webinar. So we hope you'll join us for our next webinar. And we'll be sending information out via our usual channels, our e-blast and our social media. So stay tuned for that to find out about our next free webinar. Goodbye, everyone. Have a good evening.
Have a good night. Thanks so much.
Good night.